What's going on, gamers? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking about backwards compatibility. It's pretty exciting to know that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X have a form of backwards compatibility built in. It's really cool to play some of your PS4, Xbox One games, but at the end of the day, there's a much deeper meaning behind backwards compatibility in these brand new systems. And I think the surface level, it's cool that we can just pop in our old games on new hardware, but to me and to many gamers, it's really important, and I think there's a deeper meaning behind it that I want to uncover. I want to unearth why backwards compatibility has always been so important to gamers. Whether you're retro or you're modern, it's a really cool thing, and let's talk about why I think it's such an important feature to have moving forward. First things first, backwards compatibility, it's like it's a new thing. It's always been a big thing. And with the Game Boy, that was not the first time that I really experienced backwards compatibility. Is I had the original Game Boy, then the Game Boy Color, then the Game Boy Advance came out, and all the Game Boy games were backwards compatible, which always made me wonder why the Nintendo didn't do the same thing with the Super Nintendo, with the Nintendo 64. The first time that I really got to experience backwards compatibility was the Game Boy, and then when the GameCube came out, and then the Wii actually had a GameCube adapter. And then on top of that, the Super Nintendo did have the Super Game Boy, so you could play some of your Game Boy games on it, but that's not backwards compatible. Nintendo has really never jumped into the whole backwards compatibility thing other than with their handhelds, which are fantastic. And don't get me started on the amount of 3DSs, DSs, DS Lites, 2DSs. Those are all compatible games for the most part, but that is a spider web of information just trying to keep track of which one came out first and which one's the best. And the PS2 was real similar to the Nintendo Wii in terms of being backwards compatible with the PlayStation 1. And that was really cool. And then the PlayStation 3, if you were lucky enough like myself to get the very first iteration of the PlayStation 3, it was backwards compatible with the 1, with the 2, and then obviously the 3. So that was really cool. So backwards compatibility hasn't necessarily been something that has never existed. It's just kind of faded into obscurity over the last couple hardware generations because it's so much harder. It makes it so much more expensive. As you know, the PS3 is not backwards compatible with PS1 and PS2 games after a certain period of time because essentially they put a PS2 into the PS3 to make it work, and that was just too expensive. Plus there was Yellow Ring of Death and a lot of other things. Xbox really didn't embrace the backwards compatibility issue until recently with the Xbox One, and that's also really cool they did that. So you can play some of your Xbox 360 games, but again, it's limited. You gotta know if it works. Does this game work with my Xbox One? Does it work on, just this specific game or what? Like, how does that work? And so again, it's not like they haven't tried, it just hasn't been the most seamless backwards compatibility transition until I'm hoping this version with the Series X being able to play every single game. So backwards compatibility, it's always been like that thing that everybody asks every single time a new console gets released. Are we able to play our old games on it? And it's a question worth asking. I think if I had a group of gamers with me right now and said, hey, is backwards compatibility important? I think most of them would say yeah. Well, to just further solidify what I was thinking, IGN just last week put out a post that said, is backwards compatibility important? Now we're talking about a pretty large website, so IGN gets a pretty good, group of people to do voting. We were at 4,600 votes, and the answer was already at 93% yes. 93%, that's insane. And then it got the wheels spinning, and I'm like, why is it important? Like, honestly, why is backwards compatibility so important moving forward? I mean, is it cool that I can play my PS4 games, my PS5, or my Xbox One games on the Xbox Series X? Yeah, that's really nice. But it's not like gamers, especially gaming collectors, are getting rid of their consoles anyway. Like, I'm not gonna sell my PS4, I can still play it. I still have my PS2, I still have my Nintendo, my Super Nintendo, I still have my Nintendo 64. I mean, there's a bunch of systems that I still have that I can play all my old games on. So why is backwards compatibility important in the first place? Most modern gamers like my son don't have old games to play on the new system, so why do they really care that we have backwards compatibility? Does it really make a difference to them? The answer is really no, it really doesn't. My son has a PS4, he's 8 years old. We're not gonna sell his PS4. We'll probably keep it, he can put that in his room, and then we'll get a PS5 for the living room or something like that. And most gaming families are probably gonna do that. So if that's the case, why do you need to play your old games on the PS5 when you have a perfectly good PS4 that plays the games just fine? Well, that's kind of what I'm here to talk about. So for me, I have a modest game collection. If you bring my friends over. I have more games than pretty much all of my buddies. But in terms of game collecting and big retro gamers, it's really a very, very modest collection compared to some other YouTube buddies, YouTubers. And again, with those guys that use these old school consoles and games, they're not having to play their old games on new hardware because they have the setup. I mean, seriously, take a look at this monstrosity that I have to play my PS2. I have my PS2, which is one of the hardest things to get HDMI, through a RetroTink 2X, through an M Classic. So I have a RetroTink that turns it from 480i to 480p, the M Classic upscales it, sends it to my TV, and gives me the best possible HD picture. And at the end of the day, it doesn't make my gaming experience any better, it just makes it look a little bit better. So for one, backwards compatibility I think would be important because it makes your old games look about as good as possible without having to jump through all these hoops. That's one thing. Again, for me, I've already got the setup, I've already got the investment. So how does that work? Now with that being said, the PS5 already has PS4 backwards compatibility. I think that's pretty much confirmed at this point. What isn't confirmed is it going to go back beyond the PS4? And if it doesn't, then backwards compatibility with the PS5 is not that exciting. I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong, it's cool, but it's not like it's gonna blow my mind because I still have PS4, it's still a new hardware. I would much rather have PS1, PS2, and even PS3 being upscaled to a 4K, a 1080p TV in the best possible way without having to use all of these cords and cables. So yes, so for those of us that actually have some old school games, that makes it really nice to upscale. But let's get to the actual elephant in the room. How many people besides retro game collectors or gaming collectors in general have a huge plethora of games? Not many. Like I said, I out of all my friends have the most games, and it's a very modest collection. My friends that are gamers are getting the newest system, getting rid of their old system, and moving forward and playing the newest games without really taking a huge look back. They get nostalgia trips when they come over. They get to play on my arcade, they get to play on my Raspberry Pi, my Super Nintendo. They get to play some of these old games, but it's not necessarily something that they always crave. There's a huge retro gaming community that does. But let me get down to what I believe is the most important aspect of backwards compatibility. And that is, it solidifies the production of physical hardware. That's what it comes down to. The physical hardware is guaranteed through the next console generation. And PS5, by having a disc system and playing PS4 games, says, hey, we're gonna continue to produce DVDs. We're gonna continue to produce discs, physical copies that you can buy. The Xbox even one-upped them. The Xbox Series X said they are most likely gonna be backwards compatible to every single Xbox in existence. Are you serious? I can play my Xbox 360, Xbox One. I mean, every single game that Xbox and Microsoft have created for their console will be playable on the Xbox Series X. That is rad. But more importantly, it's rad because it means they're not gonna give up on physical media. Now, for some people, they don't care. Digital is the way to go, and I completely understand why. Physical media can be a pain to take over to your buddy's house. It can be a pain to scratch a disc. You gotta pay for repairs. You can't trade in digital media. How's that sound? For those of you that buy a game and you trade it in, how are you gonna trade in digital media? Don't get me wrong, I have a feeling they're probably gonna figure that out, a digital trade-in at some point, which is fantastic. Google Stadia, the Netflix of gaming, like PlayStation Now and the new Xbox program, the Game Pass. It's great. It's cool, and I think it's a great system to have in addition to physical media. For me, I don't trade in games. I buy a game, if I can't afford it, I don't buy it. And when I buy it, I don't need to sell it. I play it, I beat it, and it becomes part of my collection, part of my history, part of my nostalgia trip when I'm hanging out by myself, bored out of my mind, and I'm reminiscing. I'm not looking through pictures, I'm looking through old games that I used to play as a kid, and I might pop them in. Not everybody has that same experience. So why is solidifying the physical media important for a lot of gamers? Well, frankly, it's not just for the retro gamers. It's not just for people like myself who like to collect games or who like to keep them. I believe it's important for a certain market, and that's the gaming market itself, like GameStop. GameStop has had a rough go. Hastings, a local place in my area, maybe it's nationwide, went out of business, and gaming was a huge part of their business. But with digital media becoming so popular, physical mom and pop stores, GameStops, they will be completely obliterated if there is no physical media. And frankly, I don't do a lot of shopping in store, but I still love to go to GameStop. I still love to pop into Ma and Pa stores. And with backwards compatibility, now we're gonna have not just the people that have nostalgia for old games, that have the systems like myself, but we're gonna be able to have these mom and pop stores, and I believe GameStop will get more and more into retro gaming if the PS5 goes farther back than just the PS4, and especially now that the Xbox Series X plays all games, GameStop and these mom and pop stores literally just opened up an entire new crowd to sell to, because now you can go in and you can buy any game for your Xbox and it will work on your current hardware. And that's something that literally is incredible. It makes my heart warm. Ooh, you got the blood flowing. Because that means that you can play any game that has the word Xbox attached to it and take it to your house and play it. That is awesome. And that is huge for the gaming industry as a whole, because any game store now that used to have these old Xbox games or Xbox 360 games that were having trouble moving them because everybody would sell their old hardware to get new hardware, can now go back and go, man, I may not have an Xbox 360, and I may not have the original Xbox, but you know what? I can go buy Halo down the road, the old mom and pop store, and I can play it on my Xbox Series X. That to me is one of the biggest selling points of backwards compatibility, is it's not just retro gamers like myself who already have access to these games, but people that go, man, I wish I wouldn't have sold my Xbox because now I want to play it. Well, now you don't have to go out and buy a brand new console again that's 20 years old. You can buy the newest game, play the newest hardware, and you can buy an old game and play on the newest hardware. And to me, that's literally it's a drop the mic moment. It's a cut the ribbon. The Xbox Series X is doing it right, and the PS5 is doing it right by having PS4, but I hope they can bring some more backwards compatibility in. And for me, that is the biggest thing as a gamer, and not just a retro gamer, is being able to pop into these mom and pop stores and keep them in business. Keep the retro gaming alive and let the younger generation who maybe has not had a chance to experience some of these older games pop in and be able to play them without having to go out and invest in an entirely old system or have a huge collection of old consoles lying around. I mean, you can have a couple consoles and play every game on the PlayStation, every game on the Xbox, and then the Nintendo Switch is doing a kind of emulation with their Super Nintendo, Nintendo N64 possibly. So there's just, it makes me excited to know that physical media is not dead. And I'm beating this horse. This horse is dying right here. I keep kicking it and beating it because I can't get over it. But I'm excited to know that Microsoft sees it. They understand it, and they're willing to bring all of that back. And that is so important. And because of that reason, I will definitely be buying a Series X, because I want to support a company that supports gamers. And so Sony, if you come across this video, which I'm sure you will with the millions and millions of subscribers and followers that I have, make it backwards compatible. Make two versions if you have to. If you have to make a $600 version that's backwards compatible to PS1 and a $500 version that's only PS4 and PS5, try it out. I mean, why not? What do you have to lose besides millions of dollars and possible bankruptcy? For those of you that stuck around, thank you. I really am passionate about this, and it's one of those things where, you know, it's just hard to talk about by yourself sometimes. So I love having you guys here to listen to my thoughts with me. Let me know, am I on point? I mean, is this something you agree with? Do you think it's a little bit more of a deeper meaning than just being able to play your old games? Because frankly, I think that GameStop and these stores, Walmart even, having the game sales and bringing in customers is so important. In digital, it's not gonna have that if it's all digital. All right, guys. You know the routine. Thanks a ton. Totally appreciate it. Keep trolling, keep rolling. We'll see you next time.